The Arari exploration vessel, Kirel, hovered silently in low Earth orbit, its sleek, crystalline hull reflecting the pale blue glow of the planet below. Commander Vren folded his two upper arms across his chest while his lower hands worked deftly at a control panel. The screen before him displayed a busy Earth city, its streets teeming with humans and their inexplicable chaos. Commander said Analyst Torvin, whose voice carried the faintest hint of curiosity. His multifaceted eyes glinted in the dim light of the command center. There has been another instance. Vren's lower left hand stopped mid-gesture. Another. So soon he turned to face Torvin, his four eyes narrowing. Explain. Torvin extended a thin, silvered appendage to the console, bringing up a live feed of a man perched precariously on the edge of a building. Wind whipped at his clothes as he leaned over, reaching out toward a tiny creature small, furred, and clearly agitated clinging to the edge of the rooftop. This human, Torvin began, his tone a blend of disbelief and fascination, is risking significant injury, perhaps even death, to save that creature. Analysis confirms it is a cat, one of Earth's many non-utilitarian life forms. Vren leaned closer, studying the scene with a growing sense of incredulity. A cat, he repeated slowly. The creatures they keep as companions for no discernible purpose. Yes, Commander Torvin confirmed. This behavior aligns with dozens of similar incidents recorded during our observation period. The man on the screen stretched further, his fingers brushing the fur of the terrified cat. Below him a 30-story drop yawned, promising certain death if he slipped. And yet, his expression was resolute, unyielding. Vren's mandibles clicked softly in thought. They risk their fragile lives for these creatures, he said. Illogical. Inconsistent. It contradicts their well-documented survival instincts. Torvin's eyes shifted to a deeper shade of green, signifying agreement. Indeed, their entire species is riddled with such contradictions. It warrants further investigation. Then retrieve him, Vren ordered, and the cat. I want to hear his explanation firsthand. Micah Dane was aware of two things first. The cat was finally safe in his arms, its claws firmly embedded in his shirt second. The blinding light surrounding him was most definitely not normal. He began, but his words were cut off as the world seemed to twist around him. When the light dimmed, he found himself in a strange, sterile room. The walls glowed faintly, their surfaces smooth and unbroken by seams or corners. The air was cool, crisp, and faintly metallic. The cat yowled, its claws digging deeper into Micah's chest. He winced, adjusting his grip. Easy, buddy. I'm as freaked out as you are. A soft hum filled the room, followed by the appearance of two figures. They were tall, their elongated forms shimmering with an almost liquid quality. Their forearms moved fluidly as they approached, their large, insectoid eyes locked onto him. Micah stared. Oh great, aliens. Because this day wasn't weird enough already. Human, one of them said, its voice smooth yet unnervingly detached. You are aboard the Arari vessel Chiral. We mean you no harm. Yeah, you'll forgive me if I don't take that at face value, Micah replied, holding the cat tighter. The creature meowed pitifully, its ears flattened against its head. The second alien stepped forward. We observed your actions and require an explanation. Why did you risk your safety for this animal? Micah blinked. You kidnapped me to ask that. Yes, the alien replied, its tone devoid of irony. Micah sighed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. Look, it wasn't some big decision. He was stuck, and I couldn't just leave him there. What kind of person does that? The two aliens exchanged a glance, their shimmering forms shifting faintly. The first one spoke again. But the creature offers you no utility. It does not aid in your survival or contribute to your societal advancement. Why then would you endanger yourself for it? Utility, Micah echoed, incredulous. He's not a tool. He's a living thing. That's reason enough. The second alien tilted its head. This behavior is not consistent with the patterns we have observed in your species. Humans often prioritize their own advancement over the well-being of others. Yeah, well, we're complicated, Micah shot back. Sometimes we screw up, but sometimes we do things just because it's the right thing to do, even if it doesn't make sense to you. The cat shifted in his arms, finally calming enough to knead at his chest with its tiny claws. Micah winced but didn't pull away. See? He's just a little guy. What was I supposed to do? Let him fall? The aliens stared at him, their silence stretching uncomfortably. Micah shifted his weight, his nerves fraying under their intense scrutiny. Okay, look, he said, exasperated. You wanted an answer, you got one. Can you send me back now? I've got a cat to feed. The first alien, who Micah guessed was the leader, leaned closer. We are not yet finished. Your explanation raises further questions. This behavior, this compassion, appears illogical, yet it is not unique among your species. We must understand it. Micah groaned. Oh, for look, you can analyze me all you want, but I'm telling you, it's not that deep. Sometimes you just do the right thing because it's the right thing. End of story. The aliens exchanged another glance, their colors rippling in shades Micah couldn't decipher. The leader straightened, gesturing toward the glowing walls. Very well. You and the creature will remain here until our analysis is complete. Micah sighed, looking down at the cat. Guess we're stuck here for a while, huh, buddy? The cat blinked up at him, then nuzzled against his chin, its purr rumbling softly. Despite the bizarre circumstances, Micah couldn't help but smile. Micah sat cross-legged on the smooth, cool floor of the alien room, the cat curled up in his lap. Its purring had slowed to a steady rhythm, a sound that felt almost grounding in the sterile, otherworldly environment. The two aliens stood a short distance away, their eyes trained on him with unrelenting intensity. Let me get this straight, Micah said, his tone less sharp than before. You don't understand why humans care about stray animals. That's what all this is about. Torvin, the smaller of the two aliens, stepped forward, his iridescent arms folding neatly. Correct. We have observed numerous instances of your species expending significant effort sometimes to the detriment of their own safety to assist creatures of no obvious value. This behavior is inconsistent with the primary survival instincts you exhibit elsewhere. Vren, the taller one who had introduced himself as the commander, added, such behaviors are exceedingly rare among other sentient species. It warrants further study. Micah tilted his head slightly, brushing his hand over the cat's fur. Maybe it's rare because it's a choice. We don't have to care about them, we want to. And sometimes, wanting to do the right thing is enough. Torvin tilted his head in an oddly avian motion. Your phrasing suggests an emotional component. Yet emotions are inherently unreliable, subject to variance and error. Why would you allow them to override logic? Micah thought about that for a moment. Because sometimes emotions make us better. Look, it's not just about logic or what's useful. This little guy, he gestured to the cat, he's vulnerable. He doesn't have anyone else to help him. So, yeah, it's emotional, but it's also about responsibility. You see someone or something that needs you, and you act. Isn't that enough? Vren's translucent eyes flickered in shades of pale green. It is. Unprecedented among species we have studied. Micah leaned back slightly, letting his gaze wander around the room. Maybe that's your problem. You're so focused on what makes sense that you miss what makes life worth living. Torvin's shimmering form rippled faintly, his colors taking on a curious hue. Explain. Micah gestured vaguely with one hand. You guys see life like a checklist: survival, efficiency, progress. But humans? We find meaning in the small stuff. A stray cat, a random act of kindness, those things matter to us because they remind us we're part of something bigger. Not just surviving, but connecting. The room fell silent, save for the faint hum of alien machinery. Vren's gaze lingered on Micah, his expression unreadable. Finally, the commander spoke. Perhaps there is merit to your perspective. However, it remains inconsistent with the majority of your species' observed behaviors. Micah sighed. Yeah, well, we're not perfect. People look the other way sometimes, sure, but a lot of us try. And when we succeed, even in something small, it makes the world a little better. Isn't that worth studying too? The cat stirred, stretching in his lap before hopping onto the floor. It padded toward the two aliens, its tail flicking lazily. Torvin stepped back instinctively, his translucent limbs stiffening. The cat sat at his feet, staring up at him with an intensity that mirrored their own. What is it doing? Torvin asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "Checking you out," Micah said with a small shrug. "Cats are curious. Probably wondering if you're friendly." Torvin bent slightly, his long fingers hovering awkwardly above the cat. It sniffed at his hand before leaning into his touch, purring softly. Torvin flinched, his colors rippling with what Micah could only interpret as surprise. "It is," vibrating, Torvin said, glancing at Vren. "That's purring," Micah explained. "It means he likes you." Torvin withdrew his hand, staring at the creature as though it had performed a miracle. "Fascinating. It displays no fear, despite our unfamiliarity." Micah smiled faintly. "That's trust. Animals are good at reading people or aliens, I guess. If they sense you're not a threat, they'll let you in." Vren watched the exchange in silence, his expression unchanging. Then, without a word, he crouched beside the cat, studying it closely. The cat turned its attention to him, sniffing at his fingers before rubbing its head against them. Micah chuckled softly. "Looks like you're making friends." Vren remained silent, but his eyes flickered with a pale blue light. For a moment, Micah thought he saw something almost like awe in the alien's rigid demeanor. The cat, satisfied with its inspection, trotted back to Micah and leapt into his lap. He scratched behind its ears, his movements automatic but comforting. "See? They're not so complicated. All they want is a little care and attention. And when you give them that, they'll give it back." Torvin's gaze lingered on the cat. This reciprocity is intriguing. It appears to offer emotional feedback, despite its inability to communicate in complex terms. "Exactly," Micah said. "It's not about words, it's about what you feel." The aliens exchanged a long, silent glance. Vren straightened, his towering form casting a faint shadow over Micah. "Your explanations provide insight, but questions remain." Micah raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" Torvin folded his arms, his colors darkening. "If this behavior is rooted in compassion, why does it not extend universally? Many humans disregard or harm similar creatures. How do you reconcile this inconsistency?" Micah hesitated. "It's not something I can fully explain. People are complicated. Some of us are selfish, scared, or just plain ignorant. But that doesn't mean compassion doesn't exist. It just means we have to keep choosing it over and over, even when it's hard." Vren's mandibles clicked softly, his colors rippling in muted shades. "A choice, then, not instinct." "Exactly," Micah said. "And that's what makes it meaningful." The room fell into another stretch of silence. The cat, oblivious to the weight of the conversation, pawed at Micah's shirt before settling back into his lap. He stroked its fur absently, his mind drifting to the street where he'd first found it. "Look," he said finally, "I can't speak for every human. But for me, helping this little guy was worth it. Maybe that's all you really need to know." Vren regarded him for a long moment before stepping back. "Perhaps you are correct. For now, our analysis will suffice." Micah exhaled slowly, relief washing over him. "So what happens now?" "You will be returned to your planet," Vren said. "However, the creature's behavior merits further observation." Micah frowned. "You're not taking him." Torvin raised a hand. "That is not our intent. We will observe discreetly, ensuring no harm comes to either of you." Micah narrowed his eyes but said nothing. The cat purred louder, as if sensing the shift in the conversation. "Prepare for transport," Vren said, his tone brisk. "Your time aboard the Corel is concluded." Micah felt the air change before he opened his eyes. The sterile coolness of the alien vessel was gone, replaced by the warm, faintly damp atmosphere of Earth. The subtle hum of machinery had vanished, replaced by distant car horns, the rustle of leaves, and the muffled footsteps of city life. He was back in the alley where it had all started. The cat was still in his arms, purring like a tiny engine. For a moment, Micah just stood there, letting the familiarity of the world ground him after the surreal encounter on the Kirill. The cat leapt from his arms, landing gracefully on the asphalt. It sniffed the ground, tail flicking, before turning to look at him as if to say, "Well, what's next?" Micah crouched down, scratching behind its ears. Guess we're both back where we belong. Huh. The cat meowed softly, rubbing its head against his leg. Come on, Micah said, standing. Let's get you something to eat. He started toward the corner store at the end of the alley, the cat padding along beside him. As they walked, Micah couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching him. He stopped, glancing up at the sky. It was a clear night, the stars bright against the inky blackness. Somewhere up there, the Corel was still observing, its crew trying to make sense of something Micah had never thought needed explaining. Hope they're taking notes, he muttered, continuing toward the store. Inside, he bought a can of tuna and a small carton of milk, ignoring the cashier's raised eyebrow when he added a cheap plastic dish to his haul. Back in the alley, he opened the tuna, pouring it into the dish and setting it on the ground. The cat approached cautiously, sniffing before digging in with gusto. Not bad for alien abduction leftovers, Micah said, leaning against the wall. The cat didn't respond, too engrossed in its meal. Micah watched it eat, the absurdity of the day finally catching up to him. He chuckled softly, shaking his head. Aliens, he said under his breath. Who'd have thought? Just as he was beginning to relax, a faint shimmer caught his eye. The air at the end of the alley seemed to ripple, like heat rising off pavement. Micah tensed, stepping forward instinctively, placing himself between the cat and whatever was coming. The shimmer coalesced into a familiar form, Torvin. The Arari analyst's translucent figure glinted faintly under the streetlights. You've got to be kidding me, Micah said, exasperated. What now? Torvin hesitated, his colors rippling in soft blues and greens. We did not intend to alarm you. The commander felt it prudent to ensure the creature's well-being upon reintegration into your environment. Micah crossed his arms. You mean you couldn't resist poking around some more? The alien's colors shifted slightly, though Micah couldn't tell if it was embarrassment or something else. The commander was. Intrigued by your explanation, he wishes to explore it further. Micah raised an eyebrow. By explore you mean standing there like a ghost while this guy finishes his dinner, he gestured to the cat, which had polished off the tuna and was now licking its paws contentedly. Torvin didn't answer immediately. Instead, he crouched awkwardly, given his elongated limbs, and observed the cat at eye level. The animal froze, its green eyes locking onto the alien's shimmering form. For a tense moment, Micah thought it might bolt. Instead, the cat approached, sniffing cautiously at Torvin's outstretched hand. It brushed its head against his fingers, purring softly. Torvin straightened, his colors flickering. Its trust is immediate and unearned. Fascinating. That's how it starts, Micah said, unable to suppress a small smile. You give them a little care, a little attention, and suddenly they're your best friend. Torvin tilted his head. This dynamic appears reciprocal. Yeah, that's kind of the point, Micah replied. The cat wandered back to Micah, curling around his legs before settling at his feet. Torvin watched in silence, his colors shifting in subdued patterns. Finally, the alien spoke. The commander has expressed interest in experiencing this bond firsthand. Micah blinked. You're telling me Vren wants a cat? The concept intrigues him, Torvin admitted. However, it is unclear if such a creature would acclimate to our environment. Micah crouched, running his hand over the cat's sleek fur. Well, if you're serious, you don't just grab the first stray you see. You've got to earn it, build trust. Torvin's gaze lingered on the cat for a long moment. Your species invests significant time and energy into such endeavors. Perhaps the commander will deem it worthwhile. Micah smirked. Yeah, well, tell Vren to be patient. Cats don't just come to anyone. Torvin's colors darkened faintly, though his tone remained neutral. Your insights are appreciated, Micah Dane. We will continue to observe discreetly. With that, the shimmering figure dissolved, leaving Micah alone with the cat once more. He exhaled, sinking to sit on the ground. Well, buddy, he said, scratching behind the cat's ears, guess you made a fan club up there. The cat purred in response, curling up in his lap. For the first time that day, Micah allowed himself to relax completely. Above them, invisible to human eyes. The Corel hovered silently. Inside, Commander Vren observed the scene through a glowing console, his translucent fingers stroking the small, furred creature now perched on a low platform. It had appeared in the Arari ship's observation chamber hours earlier astray, like the one Micah had rescued, found wandering near the outskirts of the human city. The cat sniffed at Vren's hand before leaning into his touch, purring softly. Vren's colors rippled in shades of pale green, his voice barely a whisper. Fascinating. Micah woke the next morning to the unmistakable weight of a cat sprawled across his chest. He cracked one eye open to see the little stray, now thoroughly at ease, kneading his shirt with tiny paws. The events of the previous day felt surreal in the light of dawn, but the lingering soreness in his muscles and the persistent itch of tiny claw marks were enough to remind him it had been all too real. "Morning, buddy," he mumbled, stroking the cat's fur. "Guess we're a team now, huh?" The cat purred loudly, arching into his touch before leaping to the floor and stretching luxuriously. Micah chuckled. Yeah, breakfast is coming. Don't get spoiled already." As he shuffled into the kitchen, pulling open a cabinet for another can of tuna, he felt the faintest flicker of unease. The Arari were probably still watching. He glanced out the window at the clear sky, half expecting to see a shimmer or distortion that gave away their presence. Instead, he saw nothing but clouds and sunlight. "Maybe they finally got their answers," he muttered, opening the can. The cat meowed insistently, weaving between his legs as he spooned the tuna into a dish. "Here you go," King Micah said, setting the dish on the floor. "Bon appetit." He grabbed a cup of coffee and leaned against the counter, watching the cat eat. It was strange how quickly this little creature had become part of his life. He'd always liked animals, but this was different. There was something about taking in a stray, something about knowing it relied on him that felt deeply, inexplicably right. Before he could delve too far into his thoughts, a subtle shimmer rippled across the room. "Oh, come on," Micah groaned, setting his coffee down. Torvin materialized in the corner of the kitchen, his shimmering form less startling in the daylight but no less intrusive. Micah pinched the bridge of his nose. "You guys really don't do privacy, do you?" Torvin stepped forward, his colors muted. "We apologize for the intrusion, Micah Dane. Our presence is brief." Micah crossed his arms. "What's the emergency this time?" "Another cat rescue." "Not precisely," Torvin replied. "Commander Vren has taken your insights to heart. He has chosen to foster a similar creature aboard the Chiral." Micah blinked. "You're serious?" "Vren adopted a cat." Torvin's head tilted slightly. "The commander has observed its behavior extensively. He has found its presence enriching." Micah couldn't help but laugh. "Enriching? Sure, that's one way to put it." The cat on the floor, having finished its meal, wandered over to sniff at Torvin's leg. The alien froze, his colors rippling faintly. Micah watched the exchange, smirking. "Better get used to that. They're not shy once they like you." Torvin crouched, his fingers hovering uncertainly before finally resting lightly on the cat's back. The little creature arched into the touch, purring loudly. "This is?" Common Torvin asked, glancing up at Micah. "Very," Micah replied. "They're great judges of character, so congrats. You passed the test." Torvin stood, his colors shifting to a soft green. "The commander has requested that I deliver a message." "Let me guess," Micah said, folding his arms. "Something about ongoing observations or further analysis." "Incorrect," Torvin replied. "The commander extends his gratitude. Your explanations have provided significant insight into human behavior, particularly your species' capacity for compassion." Micah blinked, caught off guard. "He said that? Gratitude and everything?" Torvin nodded. "Your actions and your willingness to explain them have influenced his perspective. The commander believes this exchange will strengthen our understanding of your species." Micah rubbed the back of his neck, unsure how to respond. "Well, glad I could help, I guess." The cat meowed, circling Torvin's legs before settling at Micah's feet. Torvin straightened. Our study of your species continues, but for now our interactions will remain indirect. We wish you and the creature well." With that, Torvin dissolved into shimmering particles, leaving Micah alone with the cat once more. He stood there for a long moment, staring at the empty space where the alien had been. "They really mean it," he murmured, shaking his head in disbelief. The cat nudged his ankle, drawing his attention. Micah crouched, scooping it into his arms. "Looks like we left an impression, buddy. Not bad for a couple of strays, huh?" The cat purred, nuzzling against his chest. Micah smiled, carrying it to the couch and settling in. As the little creature curled up on his lap, its warmth a quiet comfort, he let his thoughts drift. Somewhere out there, an alien commander was learning to care for a stray of his own. The idea was almost absurd, but it made Micah feel strangely hopeful. If a species as logical and detached as the Arari could find value in something as simple as caring for an animal, maybe humanity wasn't so incomprehensible after all. For now, though, Micah was content to sit with his new companion, the weight of the world and the stars momentarily forgotten.